Okay, so if you watched the previous video, we did some practice with multiplying binomials. And you can see that we multiplied these four different sets of binomials, meaning there's two terms in each parenthesis, and we ended up with these trinomials, this strange sounding thing where there's three terms. Now, today, which is the purpose of the lesson this week, we're going to learn how to factor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down. And you see we're actually starting with questions that look similar to the answers that we just had. Okay, so we're starting with some very simple ones, and I want to point out a few things about these. You'll notice that each one of them, obviously, each one of them has an x squared at the beginning, because I've set this up to make it a little bit easier. We're starting with the easy ones. And for these examples, they all have a 6 at the end. That's not always going to be the case, but I just want to show you how we can have different answers even when we have the same beginning and ending number. All right? So we're going to start with the first one. And for all types of factoring, when there's three terms with x squared and with an x in the middle and a number at the end, we always start by writing two parentheses. Okay. And for all of these practices where x squared is by itself with no number in front, we can just go ahead and fill in the x. Okay. So the next thing you want to do is you want to look at this 6. Right? We're always going to look at this last number when we're factoring. We want to ask ourselves, how do we multiply to get 6? So I'm going to write it over here. How do we get 6? Well, there's two ways to get 6. We either can have 3 times 2, or we could have 6 times 1. Okay, that's the only way we can multiply to get 6. So those are the pairs of numbers we're going to use in order to fill in the other two blanks. The next thing I want you to look at is this sign in front. Right? This sign in front of the 6 is a positive. So since it's positive, we are going to be adding together numbers to get 5. And not only to get 5, we want to get plus 5. Okay? So we started with how do we multiply to get 6? And then we looked at the sign here, which was adding to get this number 5. So let's go back to our list. Which pair of these numbers add up to 5? I hope you said that it is 3 and 2. Okay, so 3 and 2 add up to 5. And since we're adding, we really don't need to care about the order that we put them, just as long as they have the correct signs and they both have the same sign. So if we had multiplied this whole thing out like we did in the previous video, you would remember that if we multiplied this whole thing out, we would get x times x is x squared. I'm not going to do this for every one of these, but just remember x times x would give me this x squared. The 3x and the 2x would add up to 5x, and the 3 times 2 would give me 6. So that works. So this is our answer, x plus 3 times x plus 2. It has been written into what we call factors, which means they multiply together to give me the trinomial. So let's move on to the next one. We're going to start with our parentheses. These are set up to be easier, so we do not have to look for factors of 6 because I've already given them to you. Fill in the x. We're looking at 6. We're adding. But now we're adding to 5, but it has to add up to negative 5. So again, the numbers that add up to 5 are 3 and 2, but to make them add up to negative 5, we're going to have to do something with the signs. So we're going to have to add up negative 3 and negative 2. And if you remember from the previous video, when we had a minus and a minus, they ended up adding this example right here. When they were both minuses, we ended up adding in the middle, right, to get negative 7. And then when they were both pluses, which was this one, we added up to get a positive in the middle, right? So these are the first two that I've just gone over with factoring. So it's going to be minus 3 and minus 2. And that is our answer. All right, Let's try the next one. So what's different about this one is you're going to notice the 6 has become minus for these last two examples. So if we go back, we're still going to write out our parentheses. We're going to fill in our x. But in this case, we want to get 6, but we want to subtract. This sign at the end tells us we're subtracting. And we want two factors of 6 that subtract to give me 3. And I just realized I gave you one that doesn't work. So I'm going to have to change this, as I many times do in class. I want those. I'm going to subtract to give you 5. To give you 5 in the middle, and then I'm going to have them subtract to give you, let's say, 1 in the middle. All right. So how can you subtract to get 5? Well, if we look up here, we're not going to use the same 3 and 2 that we used before. Now we're going to use the 6 and the 1 because 6 and 1 also subtract to give me 5. So to subtract to get positive 5, we're going to use positive 6 and negative 1. Now notice what happens when you multiply this out. The 6 times negative 1 is going to give us negative 6 at the end, and we end up with 6 take away 1. 6 take away 1 gives me 5. So this example is an example with a minus at the end where we subtract to get the middle term. And the last one, sorry I had to switch the numbers here, but I did not set it up right. That happens in class too, doesn't it? So again, we're going to have x times x is x squared. And we're going to subtract to give us 6. We look at this last sign. In this case, we want to get something here. We don't have a number there, so we're going to put a 1 there. So we want to subtract to get negative 1. So if we look at our pairs of numbers up here, 3 and 2 subtract to give me, oops, sorry about that, 3 and 2. So if we want to get negative 1, we want to have more negatives. So we're going to use negative 3 and positive 2. And those are going to subtract to give me negative 6. So this is just a little extra video with my voice to help you with some of these beginning factoring questions. Watch the next video. The next video will talk about special products. And I'll also look at factoring the little bit more difficult one, which is this example here when the number in front is not equal to, when this example here where the number in front is not equal to 1. Thank you.